My first real job, not counting holiday employment, was with the electricity division. I started working there exactly 26 years and 2 days ago. The main part of my job was administering the suggestion scheme. There were about 6,000 staff located at power stations, substations, offices and depots throughout New Zealand. And they were encouraged to submit suggestions to improve productivity. I would get their suggestions evaluated by the relevant experts, and they would then be considered by a special suggestions committee which decide whether or not to formally adopt them. If a suggestion was adopted, the contributor would receive a nice thank you letter and some financial reward. The suggestions varied tremendously in quality. Some were very sensible, while others were not quite so practical. However, by far the best suggestion I received came from a worker at Huntly Power Station. This particular employee had looked up one day and noticed a serious design flaw in the boiler house. He had observed that if the sprinklers were ever turned on in the event of a fire, there was insufficient drainage capacity in the boiler intake structure to deal with the volume of water, and it would probably collapse under the weight. His solution was remarkably simple: drill bigger holes to allow the water to drain out. He was no engineer. In fact, he was a complete outsider to the engineering world. If I recall correctly, he was a migrant labourer. But his identification of this issue and his very simple solution potentially saved the electricity division hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are many themes covered in today's lesson from the second book of Kings, and I will discuss just two of them. Firstly, there is the value of keeping things simple. Naaman was the commander of the king of Aram's army. Aram was part of what is now Syria. We are told Naaman suffered from leprosy. But leprosy in the Bible can refer to any one of a number of skin conditions. What Naaman had was not one of the more serious ones. Otherwise, he would have been living in isolation. However, it was obviously causing him some distress, for he was desperately seeking a cure. He expected Elisha to come out and perform a miracle, and seemed quite offended when a messenger came out instead and told him simply to wash 7 times in the Jordan, whose water to him was quite inferior to that found in the rivers of Damascus. Now, I do not think Naaman did anything particularly wrong by asking what probably were quite reasonable questions in the circumstances. Faith does allow us to ask questions. If it did not, it would not be faith at all, but blind acceptance. However, there is a big difference between asking questions and rejecting the answers. Thankfully, on the advice of his servants, Naaman calmed down and kept things simple by doing what Elisha had originally asked. He was cured and learned through personal experience the God of Israel is the one true God. Secondly, there is the place of outsiders in God's world. Both Naaman and his king had faith that Elisha could cure his disease, even though all they had to go on was the word of someone at the very bottom of their social structure, a little Israelite servant girl. While the Older Testament is full of stories of the Israelites defeating outsiders, it is it's not uncommon for some of these outsiders to have a better connection with God than the Israelites themselves. And it's interesting to note that the king of Israel seemed to be completely unaware of Elisha's abilities. God can, did, and does use people who are outsiders to do his work in the world and speak his word to the world, including some non-Israelites in biblical times and some people outside the church today. One of the downsides of living today is it is too easy for us to overcomplicate our lives. Most of us in the Western world no longer have to worry about our very survival. We live busier and more diverse lives than previous generations, yet we seem to have less and less room for God in our lives. We spend more and more time finding ways to fill the void. More than ever, we are under pressure to consume. We put ourselves into debt to buy consumer goods, and then we wonder why they don't make us happy. Several months ago, Henry, our vicar, took me to the Southern Star Abbey in Southern Hawke's Bay, more commonly known as Kopua Monastery. Life at Kopua is simple and uncomplicated. And while I was there, I rediscovered the spiritual benefits of a simpler life and experienced the peace that comes from praying the prayers of the church throughout the day. Kopua welcomes outsiders. As a Cistercian monastery, it is a Roman Catholic institution, but anyone can visit. Visitors are always welcome, and guests are invited to share in the monastic services and enjoy the peace of the sacred space. While guests are under no obligation to participate in all or even any of the services, I chose to have the maximum possible experience of monastic life. The first service of each day is at 4:30 a.m. And I cannot begin to describe how it feels to be sitting amongst a group of monks, chanting the psalms antiphonally, while the frost is beginning to form on the pitch-black ground outside. It is an environment in which one can really feel the presence of God. Although being somewhere like Kopua is a tremendous help to finding peace, we can also find some serenity amongst the hustle and bustle of the busy outside world. And if we seek to improve our conscious contact with God through prayer and meditation, praying for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out, through studying the scriptures, through sharing the sacraments, and through actively participating in the life and mission of the church. Whether we are in a tranquil place like Kopua, or going about our busy lives in Kapiti or Wellington, such spiritual maintenance will bring us closer to God and leave us better equipped to recognise and respond to whatever he wants us to do. Thanks to the word of the little Israelite servant girl, Naaman discovered the simple truth that through God anything is possible. Just as God set Naaman free from his affliction, through Christ we too have been set free. Like Naaman, each of us was once in our own way an outsider. But thanks to the simple reality of God's saving grace, our separation from God died with Jesus on the cross, and we are outsiders no more.